My name is Christian Lehinger, and I'm the CEO and CTO of Connected Mind. Connected Mind is a mental health screening tool that's used in healthcare, corporations, and education to help identify underlying mental health conditions that are affecting people. We built Connected Mind really because there was such a big need in the healthcare space, specifically in mental health, to identify mental health conditions, because mental health at the end of the day ends up affecting physical medicine. And because most mental health is caught in the primary care doctor's office, and many primary care doctors don't have the tools or necessarily the training to easily identify those mental health conditions, there was a big need there for us to build a tool like what we had, because the doctors really needed a way of finding out what was going on with their patients so that they could give them the treatment that they needed. And after doing that, we really started to see that mental health was a much bigger issue that expanded even beyond healthcare. And so that's where we started to adapt the product for corporations to use, obviously in an anonymous way with their employees, but also in the education space, because most mental health conditions for people start before the age of 14. And if you have a mental health condition, you're 50% more likely to drop out of school. So it was a big deal. There was a big need there. And so that's really why we built the tool that we built. So what really started my entrepreneurial journey is when I was younger. My first daughter, when she was born, she had necrotizing enterocolitis, which is basically her colon was dying. And we were in the hospital, and there was a lot of issues that we were dealing with. Obviously, having a newborn that was touch and go there was really difficult. But during that process, I recognized that the healthcare industry was very fragmented, that there was a lot of opportunities to make it better. And being one that was personally experiencing this and seeing it firsthand, recognize those opportunities. And so I started the process of trying to figure out a way of really bringing healthcare together so that doctors had the information that they needed so that they could more effectively treat patients. During that process, started working at the hospital, did a lot of research, and I ended up coming up with a patent. It got patented that was a way of creating a national health infrastructure interoperability. And as I was trying to work on that, I started an IT company trying to get in to help doctors through IT, then ultimately ended up creating a company that managed the medical clinics where we were actually able to make a bigger impact. And then following that path, we ended up writing some software, all in an attempt to create this connection in healthcare. And during that process, just kind of got hit in the face with a reality that the biggest area that we could make an impact in, and the biggest area that was untouched in medicine, was mental health. And it was not an area that I really expected to find. Obviously, if you talk about it now, it's pretty easy to see that's a big need. But what I didn't know at the time was that it was an untouched area. And so once I discovered that, I decided to put everything else on hold and really focus on trying to solve that problem, because we figured that once we solved that problem, that would give us a foothold into starting to solve other issues in the healthcare space. And so I started a company that did mental health testing back in 2011. And ended up taking that company, made it fairly large, sold it to private equity, and was able to make an impact with it. But after that experience, I still had a passion for mental health. And once the private equity group took over, they just really weren't able to make it into what I had envisioned. And ultimately, through a series of events, I started another mental health company to make a really big impact on the space, and was able to take a lot of the lessons learned from the past and create the company that I'm working on now. And so it's all very exciting. Life is a series of journeys, and that's how it was with me. I've always just kind of followed the river with this, looking for opportunities to make an impact, to help people. That's really how I started. So right now, my company is located in Dallas, Fort Worth, and it's spread across the U.S. We have users across the U.S. But one of the big lessons that I learned is that being in the right place is very important. I originally started my entrepreneurial journey in Spokane, Washington. And Spokane, Washington is a great place. It's beautiful, amazing, great people. But from an economics perspective, it's just really not conducive to fast growth. It's got a relatively small population and there's not a lot of opportunities there. Once I discovered that, I started looking around the country for where I could go to make things move faster, and traveled to different cities and did a lot of research and discovered that Dallas-Fort Worth was really the best place in the country to make what I was trying to do happen. And so moved to Dallas-Fort Worth, and almost immediately things started to take off and started to make a lot of connections, started to make a lot of sales. And so I definitely think that it's really important to choose where you're going to be. Now, obviously in the world of virtual, where a lot of companies are virtual, you can be located anywhere. But I think at the end of the day, the core, the guts of the company really needs to be in a place where there's access to mentorship, where there's access to capital, where there's access to sales. That's really why we chose where we're at. So I had the same blind spot that I think a lot of entrepreneurs had/have. I hear it all the time when I talk to people, which is that my product is amazing. Why can't everybody see that my product is so cool, and why won't they buy it? And the answer is really simple. You may have the most amazing product in the world, but if it's not what the market wants, then who cares? I have really learned to stay true to the concept of MVP, or minimum viable product, which is get something out there that people want, test the market, retest, and only make changes really that the market wants. Matter of fact, in the current company that I'm in, it's the only time in my entrepreneurial journey where I started to remove features from the product because of lack of use, to try to keep the product as simple as possible. Because at the end of the day, if the market doesn't want what you have, you could be curing cancer, but it doesn't make any difference.